Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to special playoff edition of the Price Check Podcast. I am, of course, host Josh Price. Man, Arlington A-Train Lane will be popping on here in a second. But wanted to make sure that we got together to talk a little bit of a recap of the games that we've seen so far. Every game one has been played. We've seen most of the game two so far, with the exception of Brooklyn and Boston tonight, Milwaukee, Chicago tonight, as well as we actually got game three for Toronto and Philly tonight. So we'll be able to get into that news that we'll start with as soon as Arlington is able to join. It pops on there. Arlington A-Train Lane, how we doing, sir?
Doing good, man. How you doing? How you doing, Big J? Good to be
good,
back
man.
and doing this again.
Yes, sir. Definitely great to be back, man. Special playoff edition here. So we really the big news right now that we'll get a chance to start with is Devin Booker and the Suns. Of course, they took a loss last night. Devin Booker went off 31 points in the first half, and then boom, third quarter we get some hamstring tightness. He's no longer able to return to the game. And then we saw a hell of a playoff performance from Brandon Ingram. I believe 26 points in the second half, 37 total. So definitely a big playoff moment for him. And now we might have a series on our hands, in a series that I thought after game one we had seen all we needed to see. Probably going to be a sweep, maybe, ended in 5 games. But if Devin Booker is not going to play, makes things a whole lot more interesting. And even if it's not more interesting for this particular series, that's a big loss when you look at the big picture in the Western Conference.
Absolutely, man. It's crazy that here we are, because I was getting ready to give the Suns the sweep, and then the injury happened. And I remember I was at work and I just happened to catch the score in the third quarter. It was 88-80 New Orleans. Right. And I'm sitting back and like, what's going on? And then it was like, well, Devin Booker is out with an injury. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is not what the Suns need right now going into and they're trying to get back to not just the Western Conference Finals, but the NBA Finals at that. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, woo, with the way that the Golden State Warriors are playing right now, and they are on all cylinders, because that looks like, from the way it's looking, that look like a sweep or a gentleman's sweep, however you want to look at it. That's forthcoming for that team. But Devin Booker being injured right now is, we'll see how significant it is, but they're downplaying it, of course, like most teams do. Downplay it and make it seem like it's not as worse as it is. Now, if it is worse, it will change the course of the series. It'll go longer than it needs to. And even that, it would depend on what's going to happen in the next round. Because let's see what we at. Suns and Pelicans is 1-8. So that means you play against the 4 and 5, which is Dallas and the Jazz. It may not seem like a lot, but Luka's out too, but there's a potential return for him, and that could change the dynamic on how that will go for them.
Yeah, so I think if you're looking at the big picture out west right now, you mentioned Golden State. They found another death lineup right now with the emergence of Jordan Poole, being able to try him out next to Steph, Clay, Wiggins, and Draymond. They've really kind of found their stride with that lineup, especially in this series against Denver, because now it makes Nikola Jokic have to kind of live out on the perimeter a lot more on defense. I agree that series is probably a gentleman's sweep. The Nuggets, you got to go up to Denver, playing the altitude. They may be able to get game 3 or 4 at home, just feeding off of the crowd energy, stuff like that. But I think it's pretty clear that Golden State is the better team in that series, and it's definitely going to show itself as the series finishes out. But they are probably the team that is going to benefit most if Devin Booker's injury turns out to be significant. Now, we could look up, later today and find out that, okay, he's probably going to miss game 3, but he should be back after that. The tricky part with hamstring injuries, though, And anybody who's had a significant hamstring injury can attest to this. Just because you feel good on it one day does not mean that that is going to sustain. It could definitely be something that turns into a long-term injury regardless. So it definitely shakes things up out west. We haven't mentioned Memphis yet, but they, of course, given that they make it past Minnesota, who I think is going to make it a lot tougher on them than what a lot of people realized it might have been coming into that series. If they can make it past Minnesota and, set themselves up against Golden State, the winner of that series, I definitely think is in a lot better position now to win the West and make it to the NBA Finals than were thinking they probably would have a week or so ago.
Yeah, and Phoenix was strong, man. They finished strong, and usually this reminds me a little bit of the Chicago Bulls when Derrick Rose got injured.
Yes.
And against the Sixers. And they wind up losing that series because nobody expected them to lose that series against the Sixers. But you lose a key piece. But the difference is in Chicago, Derrick was the piece.
He was the guy. Like it was everything was centered around.
Yeah, everything was centered around him. Now everything is centered around Devin Booker. However, losing a scoring piece like that, which means that somebody's going to have to come and step up for the Phoenix Suns, and you're going to be looking at potentially a Torrey Craig or a Cameron Payne to go alongside Chris Paul and Cameron having to step up, being a smaller guard and making it better matchups for the Pelicans at this point. Torrey Craig, who's not really a scorer but more of a defender, you can still, as long as those two can gather and garner about the same amount of points that Devin Booker that he usually scores, then they should be okay for the rest of this series. But then again, you have to find out how many minutes that each is going to provide, and they got to be ready to step up at a moment's notice.
Yeah, hearing that Torrey Craig, Cameron Payne, not the ideal names you want to hear as far as having to replace Devin Booker scoring. Again, it probably won't hurt them quite as much in a series like this against New Orleans, but New Orleans is going to make it tough on them. And to have won that game last night on the road, knowing that you got games 3 and 4 in your building, definitely puts a little bit more pressure on Phoenix now that they probably wouldn't have faced otherwise if Devin Booker was healthy. So I definitely think that's a development to keep our eyes on. Of course, we'll get a little bit more information on that later today. We kind of hit on Golden State and Memphis out west. Dallas and Utah. You and our man, the living legend, Palmer Alexander, have often asked me why I don't buy Utah stock. And I think this is yet a prime example as to why we should not be buying any of the Utah Jazz stock, because not only did they lose game 2, they lost game 2, giving up, I believe, 36 or 38 points to Jalen Brunson, and doing that without Luka Doncic. So now, granted, they won game 1, you still won on the road, you get the next 2 at home, but you've now opened the door for Luka to return and possibly return to a series that is still wide open, as opposed to being able to truly take control of the series, winning the first 2 games.
Yeah, and I think that was key. We got to remember, even in game 1, with no Luka Doncic, they only won by what? They won by less than 10 points.
Yeah, it was a handful of points.
Single digits. It was a single-digit win. So imagine if Luka was on the floor and that happened. It wouldn't have been that result. Dallas would have probably won by double digits. But it's an indicator. Wow. And it's a shame because Utah has been practically the same team year in, year out. And I don't know if it's a coaching thing, if it's a mental thing, a physicality type of thing. We should be at a point where Utah should be looking at NBA Finals appearances. But it just seemed like they just can't get past first or second round each time, like at least a Western Conference final appearance. And it's just mind-boggling to me that this team is the same group and just can't figure the way how to get over the top.
Look,
And I don't know. They are back home though, so they can particularly get to a. It depends on like you said, like if Luka returns or not. If Luka doesn't return, then you might have a slight better advantage because you'll have the home crowd. But at the same time, you're not playing Utah Jazz. I don't think they're playing Utah Jazz basketball at all.
Well, I think the problem for them is they can't guard the ball. Like we saw, Jalen Brunson was getting everywhere he wanted to get on the court here the other night. And if you're Dallas, what you're hoping for is, okay, we've already split these first two at home. As long as we can get a split in Utah, you give yourself a chance to go into Game 5 at home with Luka back and hopefully close to fully healthy at that point. And at that point, you just make it the best out of 3 series. And if you got that opportunity with Luka on the court, I definitely like their chances. Now, you're asking a lot of that team to actually win the series without Luka. But as they showed the other night, they got some dogs, man. Jalen Brunson is probably going to go get paid by somebody this summer, even if it's not Dallas. Spencer Dinwiddie has been a great addition for them after trading Kristaps Porzingis. And then you got your guys like, Reggie Bullock, Dorian Finney-Smith, just, kind of the vet. 3-and-D guys have just been able to knock down big shots for them. Maxi Kleber was big the other night too. So you got their role guys really kind of finding the stride. Now, granted, it's a lot different being a role player at home versus being on the road. So we'll see how that translates into Game 3. But I think Dallas, man, they still alive and they still kicking it. And if they can get Luka back, especially in the opportunity of having the chance to maybe split again games 3 and 4 in Utah, I definitely like their chances. Now, if they go down 3-1, it gets a little bit dicey. But again, this is Utah we're talking about. So we'll see how that works out for them. But I think if I had to pick a winner of the series right now, I probably would go Dallas, regardless of how this Luka thing plays out, because I do think he comes back at some point. Now, if you tell me he's just definitely not playing at all in this series, then I'll probably still have to give it to Utah. But again, my gut right now tells me that it's Dallas.
It's really going to depend on Game 3. Game 3 is going to indicate whether if Luka does not return for Game 3 and Dallas wins, he'll probably play Game 5.
Yeah.
If they lose, he'll play Game 4.
Yeah, because you definitely don't want to go down 3-1 if you
3-1 going back home.
Yeah.
So at this point right now, they're playing it by ear. And if he does play Game 3, good. He needs to play because he's their general. He's they everything was weighed on his back to get them to where they are now. They get them to their 4th seed. So at this point now, you are taking control of your team. This is your team. This is the one you were taking over for Dirk. Dirk has his history with Dallas. He is Mr. Maverick. So now if you want to be considered Mr. Maverick, you need to show your face and yourself and your body, put yourself in these games and start playing. So, but it's all dependent on his injury. So if it's significant, then he'll miss it. But if they win, it doesn't even matter at that point.
Yeah, if you can win Game 3 without him, you playing with house money at that point. So interesting to see how that game plays out, because again, I think Utah is probably going to feed a little bit off the home crowd again. But we've seen strange things happen, especially in series with them. Again, it was just last year that they lost at home to a Clippers team without, Kawhi Leonard, that ended up, they lost that series to a team without Kawhi Leonard, for 4 out of the 6 games that they played. So I don't have the most confidence in Utah being able to make it out of this. So we'll definitely see how that plays out. Now we'll shift gears real quick here to the Eastern Conference. And as great as it has been to watch the Eastern Conference kind of play itself out throughout the course of this season, um, probably going to be a little bit of disappointing first round for the Eastern Conference, because if you look at things as they currently stand right now, we get game 2 of Boston and Brooklyn tonight, which for any of those folks out there who did not get a chance to see game 1, just please, put a seatbelt on, strap yourself to your chair, whatever you got to do tonight. Just please watch game 2, because this is going to be a doozy of a series. But I think outside of this series, outside of Brooklyn versus Boston, it's probably going to be a little bit of, clunkers. I mean, Toronto and Philly, we'll see how game 3 plays itself out tonight. But so far, they, as in the Raptors, they don't have an answer for Tyrese Maxey. And Joel Embiid has not even had to be super dominant yet for them to win both of those games. And so, if you get an MVP level performance from him on the road tonight, now granted they'll be without Thibault, but Toronto is missing guys too. So I think it's just kind of wrong matchup, wrong time for Toronto in this particular series, especially if Scotty Barnes can't play, Gary Trent can't play. A lot of that depth that they've relied on throughout the year is now gone. And of course, if you don't have that depth against Harden, Embiid, and now Tyrese Maxey, doesn't look like your chances are too high.
If I'm Joel Embiid, I'm talking mad trash. Kawhi ain't back there no more. I ain't got to deal with no last second shot type of shenanigans, man.
Yeah, no bouncing around the rim.
Keep talking mad noise, dude. I'll be talking mad noise if I'm Joel Embiid, man. Kawhi ain't walking through that door. You know what I'm saying? So, at this point, yeah, we're looking at. I love Scotty Barnes, man, and said no answers. They got no answers for them.
No.
And that's a sweep. I'm with Charles on that one. Believe it or not, I'm with Barkley.
Yeah, my hesitation coming into the series was that James Harden was going to maybe give up a game or two.
For what?
But so far, he hasn't really had to be exceptional. He just has to not mess it up. Exactly. And of course, we've seen his playoff shortcomings before. But in this series, he doesn't need to be, a superstar. He just needs to make sure that he continues to put Tyrese Maxey in position to continue making plays and really continue to feed the big fella. Because as long as Embiid is eating, again, those 6'9", 6'8" guys that Toronto has, just not much of a fight against Joel Embiid over the course of the series. You got, not having Scotty Barnes, who probably is going to be the rookie of the year. I feel a little bit confident in saying that. I know that Evan Mobley, of course, is kind of the person who had that torch in his hand most of the year. I just personally think Scotty Barnes' contribution to what Toronto has done, especially over the second half of the season, which is a little bit greater. I'm not mad either way in that conversation. I think both of those guys are going to be really good for a long time. But Scotty Barnes was basically the best player for Toronto in game 1, and not having him in game 2, it was heads and beds. It was over with before it started.
I will say, to that extent, I would not be mad. I know a lot of people feel that way. I wouldn't personally be mad if they were co-rookie of the years this year with Evan and Scotty Barnes, man. Like, because they both play exceptionally well. Got both teams in a position where they can make the playoffs. Granted, they think the Cavs have to do the play-in, and they couldn't get past the Atlanta Hawks, but still, they were in a good position where they can make some moves and make some stuff happen. But in the meantime, like you said, heads and beds, man, they done. I love, Toronto and Nick Nurse. I get it. Nick Nurse is an NBA champion and Joel is not. But this series, and this was going to be for all of the teams that are up 2-0. Keep your foot on these teams' necks.
Yes.
Keep it there. Yes. I understand. I get the whole conspiracy of it's money, it's advertisers and whatnot. No, this is you trying to win a championship. Keep your foot on their necks, because if you give just one inkling, just a little bit of life, it can change the course of a series.
Facts. No, and I'm right there. Honestly, the same position as you mentioned, teams that are up 2-0. Miami went up 2-0 last night on Atlanta. We tweeted about this series kind of briefly last night, but another one I think, Atlanta love Trae Young. Of course, I mentioned last postseason he made me an official fan. But they just don't have enough right now. Miami looks like a totally different team this playoffs than they did last year in that sweep against Milwaukee. So I think,
and I think they're taking that personal, and then not to mention the addition of PJ Tucker from the NBA champion Bucks gives them a little bit more leeway and a potential Eastern Conference matchup that we wanted last year because of the season before that in the bubble. Because let's not forget, these two teams got they got a nice history.
Yeah,
and it's evolving into a nice little rivalry for the playoffs. So as much as I love my Chicago Bulls, man, they're not getting past the Bucks. If anything, make it a series, just to push them a bit to their limits. Get it to Game 6, and you might have to bow out because you're gonna have to deal with Giannis and stuff. But and I'll talk a bit about them in a little bit, that series too. But with the Miami Heat right now, Miami's on a mission. And even if they have to go against one another, see, that's the difference between the Miami Heat and the Denver Nuggets. We can have fire up under our skin and still win.
Yeah,
we can
have those competing mentalities a little bit. We can get a little bullheaded with each other, but at the end of the day, we're gonna be able to bring it full circle and kind of turn that back into wins. Because again, at that point, when I saw that, a few weeks ago, the whole thing with Jimmy Butler, Eric Spoelstra, Udonis Haslem, I thought that was a bad sign for Miami. But clearly, they've been able to get past that and turn
it on you.
They made that turnaround real quick. So I definitely think that's a sweep. Maybe 5 games if Atlanta can pull one out at home. But
I wouldn't
they're playing defensively right now. I don't see Miami losing. Which that sets up a pretty nice second round matchup of Miami versus Philly, which that could be. I think the Eastern Conference second round, regardless of how the Brooklyn-Boston series plays out, I think that's really going to be where we lock back in, because if you get Philly, Miami, oh my gosh, and then you got Brooklyn or Boston. Brooklyn or Boston against Milwaukee.
Everything except Brooklyn, because get it, Brooklyn faced Milwaukee is going to be a great matchup. Boston faces Milwaukee is going to be a great matchup. You know what I mean? Everybody's going to look towards Milwaukee because, of course, Milwaukee is the NBA champ.
Right.
The matchups themselves, man, will be pretty prolific. And I know a lot of people looking for a come-out party for St. Louis's own Jason Tatum. He had the game-winning bucket in Game 1. Kyrie with the fingers and whatnot, middle fingers, whatnot, to Boston crowd. But the first round will be probably underwhelming, but let's not call it totally underwhelming yet, because we haven't seen Game 2 of Bulls and Bucks, and we haven't seen Game 2 of as we're doing this recording, we haven't seen Game 2 yet of Brooklyn and Boston. So
right. Well, but I think either way we slice it, Brooklyn and Boston is probably going 7. I think that's happening. We can just go ahead and pencil that in right now. I'll even make the bold prediction that Brooklyn wins tonight. I'll put that out there. I think Kevin Durant will probably rebound from the kind of off game that he had in Game 1, and I just think that's going to be a hell of a series, regardless of how it plays out. Now, I'm a little conflicted because, of course, I'm always rooting for the home team, St. Louis's own Jason Tatum, but of course he is in the Celtics uniform, and my Laker fandom is not enjoying that. So we'll see. I want the best for Jason, but at the same time, being it's a little tough. It's a little tough.
I mean, considering that Kevin had a bad shooting night and they only lost by a point.
Yeah, that's not necessarily a good sign for Boston. Which is again why I picked Brooklyn tonight. Again, 7-game series, it can go either way. I think there are some things for, if you're Brooklyn, you have to be happy that you were still in the game, even with KD's kind of off night. Now, on the flip side of that, though, it was a very, very easy for Boston to get easy buckets, which you cannot be thrilled about if you're Brooklyn. So that's definitely an adjustment that you want to make going in the game too. And if you're Boston, you also kind of got to look at it as, we still were able to pull it out, but KD bad shooting night. Outside of KD and Kyrie, there really wasn't a whole lot else from the Nets. You had Goran Dragic, who kind of stepped up for them, in the third quarter when they really needed it. But if you're Boston, you got to make sure that you also don't take your foot off the gas and you kind of keep going at Brooklyn the same way that you have, because, if they can steal one on the road tonight, it's a really, really tall ask of Boston to think that they can go into Brooklyn and win 2 games and kind of go back home up 3-1. So you got to do everything you can to go out to Brooklyn with a 2-0 lead.
Yeah, and Kyrie and KD are feeding off of each other. Kyrie's going to feed off the booze, and KD is going to be the assassin that he has already been throughout his entire career. So this is nothing new for them. It's just now with those two, same thing have to happen again. The benches have to for Brooklyn, they have to maintain what they did in game 1, because they weren't bad. They just lost by 1.
Right.
It wasn't like they lost by 10 or 20.
Yeah, you had a few different breaks in that game that could have gone.
Great pass, Marcus Smart to either way. Yeah. So it could have gone Brooklyn's way, but it didn't, and they know that they just need to make slight adjustments. I think, like you said, this series 7 games. I want 7 games out of it, because I want to be on the edge of my seat. I want it to be. I know they don't, but the fans want like this. They don't want that. Of course they don't.
Yeah, like honestly, if we could get 7 games from this Brooklyn and Boston series, and also 7 games from Memphis and Minnesota, I think that would be an ideal first round for us. Regardless of what happens with the other 3 series on each side, I think if you get 7 games out of both of those, the NBA has won for the first round, because we know come the second round of the playoffs, the show is going to start, both in the East and the West, because if we can get Golden State and Memphis in round 2, regardless of who Phoenix might play, if they can make it out, given this Devin Booker injury news, we're going to have some good series to look forward to in round 2.
Oh my God. And just that you mentioned that Ja Morant against Steph Curry, for round 2. You got Klay Thompson. It looked like he back as an assassin once again, man. And Draymond is stifling Nikola Jokic, man. Like, really? Like,
they found their footing, man. Because again, coming into the playoffs, I was a little worried about their outlook as far as being a championship contender, because of course we didn't know what Steph's injury situation was like at the time. And I think, they still needed time to make sure all of these pieces really fit the way that they needed to. And right now against Denver, they look like a well-oiled machine, man. So I think they'll definitely be in the second round. Again, if Memphis can make it past Minnesota, I think for the Western Conference, that's really the series to keep our eye on. So really, really excited to
that
see
one, that Minnesota-Memphis one, that Minnesota-Memphis series, like, I'm excited for that.
Man.
This is basketball, man. Like, legitimately. And granted that they took a beat down, Minnesota did. I don't think you're not upset about it. I mean, you got beat pretty bad, but it was a statement for the Grizzlies, because they needed to do what they need to do, because they were the number 2 seed,
right?
To get back into the series. But now that the series shifts to Minneapolis, you're looking at a totally different atmosphere, and I know they're going to be rocking just like they did the play-in game with the Clippers. A lot of chips are on shoulders because Pat Beverly, granted that, he came from the Clippers and he let the Clippers know how he really felt about them.
Right.
This is a time where, as a veteran, as much as we don't like him, as a veteran, you need to let them know how deep this series is. Because if you can knock off a team, and heaven forbid you knock off a team like Memphis, it boosts your morale.
Right.
And take it and remember to take it one game at a time. So, and you got a guy like Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards is hood, like straight hood, man. And like, you got to calm him down.
I love every single second of any time he is behind the microphone. Love it. I'm here for all of it. One of probably my favorite athlete in all sports right now to hear a press conference from. He's gonna give you a sound every time. He's gonna
Marshawn Lynch, man. Shout out to Marshawn Lynch doing his thing in Seattle, man. Joining the Kraken, but that's beside the point. The point is his personality.
Yeah,
that's what Anthony Edwards has, is that type of that energy, even his hood energy. You know what I'm saying? That's what he rubs off, and kind of bringing a bit of AI to the picture once again. You don't really have that from a guy behind the microphone, especially in the league today. Because I haven't heard really from Tyrone Maxey, and he'll probably get depicted as that as such too. But Anthony Edwards, you're always good for a good soundbite, man. And he let the game back it up, because he don't even look like a cat that's 21 years old, and like a cat that's been in the league 10 years.
Special, man. Special. I think that's my favorite part about this series, is just the amount of young talent we get to see in the series, because very often throughout NBA history, both recent history and in the past, a lot of times these young teams go up against, kind of the older veteran team for their first real playoff runs. And both of these teams get to go against somebody kind of in that same age and energy bracket, which it's just going to make for a beautiful series to play out, over the course of 7 games, man. So I think, again, that series and Brooklyn and Boston are going to be kind of the two that we really get to see play out for the long haul. In the East, we might be done in 5 games or less for all of the other 3. And then, of course, depending on what happens with Phoenix and Devin Booker, man, that'll be interesting to see how it plays out here over the course of the rest of the first round. But gonna put you on the spot a little bit before we wrap up. If you had to give a finals prediction today, who are those 2 teams in the NBA Finals?
It's tough. I got two matchups. One is the same in both matchups, and I got 2 different teams in the other. So one of them would be Warriors and Heat.
Okay.
And the other one would be Warriors and Bucks. So
okay.
I don't see the Suns overcoming Golden State. And that's if they remain healthy. You got to remember. Steph still got those knee injuries, and Clay just freshly coming off of it. He haven't played in 2 years, but he looked like, even in 2 years span, he's growing to being back to where he was when he was an assassin back in 15 and 16. I mean, he was in 17 and 18 too. What I'm getting at is this was before Kevin Durant.
Right.
You know what I mean? God almighty, I tell you, I'm sitting back and I'm looking at him and I'm like, damn, they really looking like that. They back to the team of old back in 2015. Right. That's what's going to be the good thing. That if Devin Booker wasn't injured, I'd have said Suns and Bucks again.
Yeah, that's been kind of my go-to prediction all season, honestly. From what I've seen, if I had to lean one way, it would be Suns Bucks. But to what your point, if Devin Booker is going to be significantly hurt or out for the majority of the rest of the playoffs, or some of it beyond the second round, Golden State is shaping up real nice for them, man. So I think if it's not going to be Phoenix winning the West, it's probably the Warriors. And I think that's a hell of a matchup if we can get Warriors Bucks in the finals. That, Suns and Bucks last year was a great one. I think, that would definitely live up to, if not exceed, last year's matchup. So
Phoenix picked me off that series. They really did.
Well, they had the series in hand, up 2-0. And then, of course, Milwaukee, they kind of flipped the switch. But I think part of that is just Giannis got healthier as that series went on. And then, of course, we saw with the 50-piece in Game 6, man, he kind of made his presence felt in a much bigger way as that series went on. So we'll see if that history plays itself out.
Milwaukee too now. It's a lot of pressure for Milwaukee, man, because because they already looking at the Lakers 20. Yeah, your boys, the Lakers 2020 title is tainted because it was in the bubble and stuff like that. And you got to remember the Bucks won with a 72-game season. You ain't do it in a full 82. So you got to, if you can make it happen once again, then they'll be legit. And then, like, seriously, if the Bucks do win the title once again, they are a legitimate. You got to put them in some of the best teams, and then it's gonna sound crazy. You got to put them in some of the best teams in NBA history because of their team play.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't think you can give me a time where you had a superstar. Not talking about all-stars, because Chris Middleton is like Klay Thompson to me. You're all-star, but they ain't a superstar.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an accurate tier for him in terms of like level of player that he is. Yeah.
Exactly. You get what I'm saying? There's levels to that. And then Giannis is the superstar. I can't think of a team back in the day. Because let me ask you this then. Let me ask you in retrospect. Would you consider Scottie Pippen a superstar?
I would not.
So then you had to go back to the Bulls then.
Yeah.
As in a title-bound team where you had one superstar, you had all-star and role players, and they made the team up as a championship caliber team. Because Giannis is going to look bigger than Chris Middleton. Because if memory serves me correct, when the last time you seen Scottie Pippen do a commercial?
Yeah, like Scottie wasn't marketed as that type of star. He was Jordan's sidekick, which is probably why he's pissed off writing books and shit now. So.
But that's my point. Giannis is getting looked at as the superstar. Middleton is the sidekick, and I know in the teams in the past, there was more superstars on a squad, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, or you know what? I'll say the San Antonio Spurs. Let me do that. Let me be honest.
Yeah, but so even the hard part I have with the Spurs though is that they didn't have superstars, but having both Parker and Ginobili is a little different than just your regular all-stars. Like you've got a full-blown big three at that point. It's not the same level of big three as obviously like a LeBron, Chris Bosh, and D Wade, or even, to a certain extent, Garnett, Pierce, and Ray Allen. But at the same time, they won multiple championships for a reason. Like that's a slightly different level. But it also, I see what your point is.
Is Duncan a superstar?
Yeah, Duncan's definitely the superstar, but Parker and Ginobili aren't. So I see exactly what you're going for as far as the Middleton and Drew Holiday type of comparison.
Yeah. I'm going for the team aspect.
It's a little bit of a cheat code to be because of I think it's weird, but Tony Parker and Ginobili kind of float between that Middleton, Klay Thompson level and the superstar level. Because I think on a given night, you could get superstar level performances out of Ginobili and or Parker. Same way as you can get a superstar level performance out of Klay Thompson on the right night. So it's a little different for them to me, but I definitely think there's a little bit of a parallel in how those teams were built and how Milwaukee's trying to build this thing around Giannis. So we'll see, man. I think Milwaukee is still my favorite to win it all, regardless of if it's Phoenix or Golden State or whoever that comes out of the West. I definitely don't want to disrespect Memphis. Actually, was just watching a
that
video.
was the other thing, though.
I was watching Memphis' celebration of the game, and of course, Whoop That Trick is playing in the arena, and I get so much joy out of hearing just that puts a smile on my face that they really are. Memphis is being Memphis, and that there's no better joy in the world than seeing a community truly embrace their team in the way that the Grizzlies have been embraced by the community of Memphis.
Shout out to Sharon Brown, man, who covers the
big
Memphis
shout out
Grizzlies.
to Sharon Brown, man. I've been
when I
reading her and her tweets about Memphis all year, and I'm
God Almighty, she is like the Memphis mom. The don't you talk bad about my boys. You're not going to talk bad about my boys in front of my face like this. She's diehard, even though she reports for them. She is like there's a huge fandom to her when she talks about the Memphis Grizzlies and how much she wants to see them succeed, you know, and it's terrific. I love seeing that, man. And with her and in the country, seeing shout out to John Moran. I saw that Cardinal hat that you rocked. I saw it, man. Yeah, he was rocking it. He was rocking it, man. Yeah, I saw that. You got my attention. You got my attention, bro. Okay.
Yeah, I need to add John Morant to the collection of jerseys or jerseys as they've been called, the t-shirt jerseys. Need to add to my collection, man, because he's another one. These young guys, I'm just crazy about watching because there's no limit to what he might be capable of doing or what kind of highlight he might be capable of pulling off on a game-to-game basis. So.
I'm real quick, and before we go, man, I know we said we were about to get out of here, but some keep coming up. When you mentioned John Morant, so I got a friend of mine who watches the NBA, big Laker fan, just like yourself, and he was saying that John Morant kind of reminded him of Derrick Rose, and that don't excite him because, and I get it, there are people that are not excited by the high-flying type of guy, that explosive, because they don't provide, they don't get NBA championships out of it. Case in point, Russell Westbrook, Derrick Rose, John, even John. But like the dude is still exciting, and he has put them in a place where that if not NBA Finals appearances or Western Conference Finals appearances, they definitely make playoff appearances. Yeah, like Memphis is, as long as Memphis knows what's good for them, extend them and say you are a lifer here in Memphis. Like, we'll give you the world.
Right. This is your city. Here's the key to it.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it took them a while to find such a talent.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Of course, it's luck that goes into it. Because, I mean, you look at that draft, if they are a pick higher, they're, not stuck with Zion, but they could be the team dealing with Zion's foot injury right now, as opposed to having a guy that's leading them, through the Western Conference playoff race. So, it's all about breaks of the game, baby. All about breaks of the game.
Absolutely so.
Yeah, but no, we can go ahead, wrap up, man. Been a fun playoff edition of the Price Check Podcast here. Thanks to StreamYard, Cafe Piazza. Happy 420 to all the folks out there. Real big shout out, since this is probably the only recording I'll be able to do before April 23rd. But want to give a special shout out to my son Josiah. Happy birthday to him this weekend. He'll be turning 2. I have a 2-year-old. Don't know where the time has gone, but crazy times here in the Price household, man. So
yes,
hey, everybody tuning in, joining us. But of course, until next time, man. Josh Price, Arlington A Train Lane. Check it out.